Chapter 1. The Bear. The bear had been their undoing, though at the time they had all laughed. No, Mama had never laughed, but Lyddie and Charles and the babies had laughed until their bellies ached. Lyddie still thought of them as the babies. She probably always would. Agnes had been 4 and Rachel 6 that November of 1843, the year of the bear. It had been Charles's fault, if fault there was. He had fetched in wood from the shed and left the door ajar. But the door had not shut tight for some time, so perhaps he'd shut it as best he could. Who knows? At any rate, Lyddie looked up from the pot of oatmeal she was stirring over the fire, and there in the doorway was a massive black head, the nose up and smelling, the tiny eyes bright with hungry anticipation.
"Don't nobody yell," she said softly. "Just back up slow and quiet to the ladder and climb up to the loft. Charlie, you get Agnes, and Mama, you take Rachel."
She heard her mother whimper. "Shh," she continued, her voice absolutely even.
"It's all right long as nobody gets upset. Just take it nice and gently. I'm watching him all the way, and I'll yank the ladder up after me."
They obeyed her, even Mama, though Lyddie could hear her sucking in her breath. Behind Lyddie's back, the ladder creaked, as 2 by 2, first Charles and Agnes, then Mama and Rachel climbed up into the loft. Lyddie glared straight into the bear's eyes, daring him to step forward into the cabin. Then, when the ladder was silent, and she could hear the slight rustling above her as the family settled themselves on the straw mattresses, she backed up to the ladder and, never taking her eyes off the bear, inched her way up to the loft. At the top, she almost fell backward onto the platform. Charles dragged her onto the mattress beside her mother. The racket released the bear from the charm Lyddie seemed to have placed on him. He banged the door aside and rushed in toward the ladder, but Charles snatched it. The bottom rung swung out, hitting the beast in the nose. The blow startled him momentarily, giving Lyddie a chance to help Charles haul the ladder up onto the platform and out of reach. The old bear roared in frustration and waved at the empty air with his huge paws, then reared up on his hind legs. He was so tall that his nose nearly touched the edge of the loft. The little girls cried out. Their mother screamed, "Oh, Lord, deliver us!"
"Hush," Lyddie commanded. "You'll just make him madder."
The cries were swallowed up in anxious gasps of breath. Charles's arms went around the little ones, and Lyddie put a firm grip on her mother's shoulder. It was trembling, so Lyddie relaxed her fingers and began to stroke.
"It's all right," she murmured. "He can't reach us."
But could he climb the supports? It didn't seem likely. Could he, in his frustration, take a mighty leap and... No. She tried to breathe deeply and evenly and keep her eyes fixed on those of the beast. He fell to all fours and, tossing his head, broke off from her gaze as though embarrassed. He began to explore the cabin. He was hungry, obviously, and looking for the source of the smell that had drawn him in. He knocked over the churning jug and licked tentatively at the blade. But Lyddie had cleaned it too well after churning that morning, and the critter soon gave up trying to find nourishment in the wood. Before he found the great pot of oatmeal in the kettle over the fire, he had turned over the table and the benches and upended the spinning wheel. Lyddie held her breath, praying that he wouldn't break anything. Charles and she would try to mend, but he was only 10 and she 13. They hadn't their father's skill or experience.
"Don't break nothing," she begged silently.
They couldn't afford to replace any of the household goods.